For the hobby, 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 for the hobby. Welcome to the For the Hobby podcast. I'm your host, Jordan Hagedorn, and this is episode 3, the Michael Jordan episode. Thanks to everyone who's listened to past episodes and shared it with your friends. We really appreciate the support. On this episode, it's going to be all Michael Jordan everything. I'll introduce my special guest shortly, but first, an episode overview. On this episode, we'll talk about the Michael Jordan card landscape. We'll share our origin stories and why we love Jordan cards. We discuss the 1998-1999 Fleer Ultra Michael Jordan while touching on the biggest basketball card collector on the planet and how I think one of his cards could go for $600,000 even though it might be $1 million card. We go in depth about the upcoming Last Dance documentary featuring Michael Jordan and the Chicago Bulls and how it could affect the Jordan card market. And lastly, I reveal my 3 favorite Jordan cards as part of our hashtag 3JordanCards competition. With all that said, I now proudly introduce a fellow Midwest native and what I would consider as a passionate, obsessive, relentless Michael Jordan collector. He's one of the best hobbyists I know and is part of the trio who hosts the House of Jordans podcast. So without further ado, please welcome my special guest and friend, Chris Mcgill. Chris, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much, Jordan. It is always a pleasure and an honor to be in any way a contributor to a For the Hobby episode or project, so I really appreciate the opportunity to be on. And what an exciting time to be a Michael Jordan card collector. I can't think of a more exuberant period of Michael Jordan collecting than right now. So extremely, extremely excited, and I can't wait to get into this episode.
I appreciate that intro. You and I have connected about cards here over the last about year, and have just constantly been talking about the hobby and uplifting the hobby and trying to find ways to continue to contribute to the hobby that we loved as a kid. And now we're back, almost 20 years later. So it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you about some of this stuff. And I've always appreciated your perspective and the intelligent approach that you bring to the hobby. And when it comes to Jordan cards, I would say there's nobody that loves Jordan cards and knows more about Jordan cards than you. So certainly appreciate having you on episode 3.
Thank you, man. I'm reminded of when we first met face-to-face in Los Angeles. You invited all 3 of us from the House of Jordans podcast out to Hollywood, to West Hollywood, to meet up with you. We had a great dinner. We bonded over cards for hours and hours, and a great relationship was sort of kicked off then. And, now we talk hobby all the time, and I think that the hobby is really in a better place with the leadership you're providing, and the For the Hobby movement is tremendous. It's just a tremendous thing for the hobby, man. So I'm brimming with optimism and enthusiasm, and just what a great time to be a collector.
Yeah, I appreciate that. When we were in LA, I was out there with Sneaker News working with Kawhi Leonard, and you guys had a chance to a little brush with Kawhi at an event there.
We sure did, man. We got some T-shirts. It was a blast. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it never sucks to run into a top 5 NBA player on a whim.
No, it doesn't. That's for sure.
Amazing. So thank you again for coming on. I want to start with something that you and I nerd out about Jordan cards all day long, and we're digging into our collections and the landscape, and you talk a lot about the market. The market's on fire right now with the Last Dance coming, but I want to give the listeners some context when it comes to Jordan cards, whether they're new collectors or seasoned veterans in the hobby, or people that are just curious, random average Joes and Janes that know nothing about cards whatsoever. So could you walk us through a breakdown of the Michael Jordan card landscape from when he came into the league as a rookie until maybe let's just go through his playing days?
I would love to. And fasten your seatbelts, because this is going to be a fast ride, but it's going to be a very fun one. So this is going to be a rough and a broad sketch of basketball card history in the Michael Jordan playing era. That history starts with 1984-85 Star. Those cards were distributed as team sets and sealed bags directly to dealers. Now, the hobby perception about this set is even though Star had a license to produce NBA cards, there's still debate about whether this should be considered Michael Jordan's true rookie card. And that debate rages on. But it's a very important and appreciated set and lineage of cards. And there was about 4,000 sets made of the 84-85 Star team bags. So that's quite a limited release of the 84-85 Star 101 Michael Jordan card. Now, what followed that was 86-87 Fleer. And that marked Fleer's return to NBA cards. And it's perhaps the most important basketball set of all time. It has rookie cards, of course, of Jordan, but also Barkley, Malone, Olajuwon, Ewing, Drexler, Isaiah Thomas, Dominique Wilkins, Chris Mullin, James Worthy, and many more. So it's easily one of the most important basketball sets ever made. By the time we get to 1989-90, we have the first year of hoops. And the Michael Jordan base card from that set is iconic. In 90-91, we get the first year of Skybox. So now we're getting the addition of some legacy brands into the hobby. In 91-92, we get the first year of Upper Deck basketball. In 92-93, we get the first year of Topps basketball. We get the introduction of the Topps Gold Parallel. We get the first year of Stadium Club. We get the Beam Team insert. As modern guys refer to it as the original velocity finishing pattern that you see in modern optic cards. And you get the first year of Ultra as well. And this was a very important year in card collecting because it was Shaquille O'Neal's rookie year. Then you get to 93-94, you have rookie cards of Penny Hardaway and Chris Webber. And the hobby's definitely taking itself more seriously and starting to see itself as tiered and is having different levels of cards. So you get premium products rolling out like Finest, and you get the introduction of the Finest Refractor. And, of course, the Michael Jordan card in that set is the first card in the set. It's the first basketball card refractor that was ever made. You also get the arrival of foil inserts in 93-94. So you get Scoring Kings, you get Power in the Key, two great contributions by Arena Design, who the hobby will always be eternally grateful for your role and the role of Cardboard Chronicles and bringing Arena Design into the fold and allowing them to connect with us collectors through their Instagram page and their appearances on hobby content platforms. And in 93-94, you also got foil Upper Deck inserts like the special edition Behind the Glass insert. Then we get to 94-95, and this is a very interesting year of cards because by this point in time, Jordan had his first retirement from basketball, and he went into baseball. And so now let me kick this over to you a little bit to talk about the importance of Jordan's baseball cards and the importance of that 94-95 year in terms of sports card collecting.
Well, and I think it was an interesting time. 94-95 was when I first got into collecting, and at that point, the hobby was on fire. You had Michael Jordan coming off back-to-back-to-back championships. He was the greatest player on the planet, and his cards were red hot. Everybody wanted Michael Jordan cards. I remember at school, everybody was talking about Michael Jordan cards. 93-94 Finest, in my opinion, was one of the most beautiful cards ever created. Then you had the Refractor, which was just almost impossible. So those years were huge for the hobby. Michael had retired. It kind of shocked the world. I think the hobby was wondering where things would go from there. And when he went to baseball, that's when I discovered some of his cards. So I remember the Upper Deck Star Rookie. I remember looking back in 1991, he had a baseball rookie with Upper Deck. And then he had Collector's Choice. I remember the Collector's Choice baseball rookie of Michael Jordan where he's wearing the White Sox uniform. And I just love that. It's still one of my favorite cards. It's so basic. At that point, he was on a different side of the hobby. And he was still a global icon, but it was just different at that point. Once he announced that he was coming back, though, it was something that kind of took the world by storm, and people couldn't wait to get their hands on the next year of cards, 94-95, to see what would happen. Coming off baseball, nobody had any idea what would happen. I know on the sneaker side, Tinker Hatfield, who designed his Jordan 11s, he had designed those shoes while Michael was retired and just assumed that he was going to come back. And so by the time he came back, his sneakers were ready. And I have a feeling that when he announced that, card companies scrambled a little bit. I would assume some of them had cards ready. He had a deal with Upper Deck, so they continued to produce baseball cards. But at that point, 94, 95, he announces his comeback in March of 95, wearing number 45, and then I'll kick it back to you.
So 94, 95 was, even with the uncertainty of Jordan's return, especially for the early season releases, still introduced some important sets to the basketball card history books. The first would be the aforementioned Collector's Choice basketball. You also had the first year of Flair. You had niche brands rolling out that were short-lived but are remembered fondly in the hearts of collectors, such as Embossed and Emotion. And if these sets included an MJ, and some did and some didn't over the entirety of the 94-95 run, if they did include MJ, they typically depicted him wearing jersey number 45. And so you've got like the intense insert that depicts him wearing that jersey. You've got the infamous, beloved Finest refractor from Series 2 of 94-95 Finest that shows Jordan wearing the 45. So 94-95 kept on carrying the basketball card momentum, but it really went to a different level starting in 95-96, which would be ultimately the first NBA Finals victory for that legendary Chicago Bulls team of their second three-peat. So in 95-96, Metal is introduced, Skybox EXL is introduced, SPX is introduced, the Ultra Gold Medallion Parallel, one of both your and my favorite cards, is introduced, and we start to see some super rare inserts be introduced, such as the Hoops Skyview insert, which the pack odds for the Michael Jordan card were 1 in 4,800 packs. Then we get to 96-97, and what an interesting year, especially from the perspective of rookies. So you've got Kobe, Iverson, Nash, and other important rookies in these products. You've got the introduction of super rare parallels and numbered parallels. So you've got the first Skybox EX 2000 Credentials parallel, which was numbered to 499. You got the first Finest Gold refractor ever made. You've got the first Ultra Platinum Medallion parallel ever made. You've got the first Skybox Rubies parallel ever made. You've got the first Precious Metal parallel ever made. You've got the first Flair Showcase Legacy Collection parallel ever made. This was also the first year of Monster inserts. You've got the Flair Showcase Hot Shots insert and the Skybox EX 2000, a cut above insert, as two examples of the Monster and Impossible to Pull inserts from 96-97. This was the first year of Bowman's Best. This was the first year of Topps Chrome. This was the first year of Z-Force. It was the first year of UD3. Very important year in the hobby. But 97-98 was perhaps the most important year in basketball card history from the perspective of how things were revolutionized. So you have in this year the introduction of Grails with super low print runs. You've got the Finest Gold Embossed Refractor, which was out of 74. You got the Metal Universe Precious Metal Gems. That includes the green, which has 10 copies, and the PMG Red, which has 90. You've got the Metal Universe Championship Precious Metal Gems, which is numbered to 50. You've got the Skybox EX 2001 Credentials, and different players in that set had different serial numbered cards, but the two that featured Michael Jordan were the Credentials Now, which is numbered to 9, and the Credentials Future, which is numbered to 72. You've got the Z-Force Super Raid, numbered to 50, Ultra Platinum Medallion, numbered to 100, the Flair Legacy Collection, numbered to 100, the Skybox Rubies, numbered to 50, the Upper Deck Game Jersey Autograph, numbered to 23, and the unnumbered but highly elusive UD3 Season Ticket Autograph. So 97-98 was the birth of Grails, is kind of the way that I think about it. And then finally, we've got 98-99. And even though MJ was retired for this season, many of us collectors still consider these to be playing years cards because they contemporaneously documented Michael Jordan's 97-98 season, that final legendary season in his Bulls run. That's the subject of the Last Dance documentary. And 98-99 continued to build on the foundations that had already been laid. So you've got elusive Finest and Chrome refractors. You've got Grails, such as a continuation of the Skybox Rubies, which is out of 50. You've got another PMG out of 50. You've got the Platinum Medallion out of 99, and then you've got Monster inserts too. You've got linchpins, you've got noise boys, etc. In fact, some of the most important playing years MJ cards are contained in 98, 99. And I think that is a 30,000-foot bird's eye view of the history of Michael Jordan playing years basketball cards.
I love it. That would be Michael Jordan Cards 101 if I ever heard it.
What a great run. What a great historic period. You get to, within that period, you see the evolution of artistry and design. You see the evolution of technology, the evolution of manufacturing techniques, the evolution of marketing strategy, of set collation, and an ongoing interaction back and forth between collectors and manufacturers and brands to continue to tailor the hobby and ultimately lay a foundation that is still relied on 20 plus years later as Panini now controls the NBA licensed basketball card market.
Well, and I think that's my favorite part about the 90s was that there were so many brands that had a license, and there were so many athletes in the 90s that were transcendent. You know, we're talking about basketball. On the baseball side, you had guys like Griffey and Jeter and Alex Rodriguez. On the football side, you had my favorite, Brett Favre, Dan Marino, John Elway, Barry Sanders, Jerry Rice. And then on the basketball front, you had Jordan, Shaq, and Penny, and Iverson, and Kobe. And I think all the years that you just rattled off, in my opinion, are the greatest basketball cards manufactured of all time.
You won't hear a disagreement from me on that. And I come from the perspective of someone who collects modern cards as well. And I love modern cards, and I love a lot of dimensions of the modern basketball card world. And there's a lot of interesting aspects to it that make it a really fun mental puzzle and challenge and a great hobby to relax and enjoy. But the 90s was a period of revolutionary change, and it was a period of incredible experimentation and risk-taking. It was a period marked by competition among, as you pointed out, the various brands to try and create that most beautiful, most innovative, next-level card that could be inserted at impossible pack odds to provide that thoroughly engaging chase for collectors. So, yeah, you won't hear any disagreement from me there. It absolutely is historic and a true treasure. And even now, as I'm, solidly into my fourth year back into collecting again, I still learn new things about the 90s all the time.
But I think the beauty of that era was there were so many brands competing. There were incredible athletes. There was so much money in the system. There was no internet yet these hobby shops and card shows and all these things that were happening in the hobby made it so vibrant, and it was just an unbelievable time. I think it captured lightning in a bottle. I think as Michael Jordan and players of that caliber like Kobe and Iverson and Duncan were revolutionizing the game of basketball in the 90s, these card brands were revolutionizing the way we looked at sports cards for the rest of our lives.
Yeah, man, captured lightning in a bottle is a fantastic way to put it.
Yeah, man, for sure. So I got to say, you clearly have a very robust knowledge of Jordan cards. So just for listeners' sake, I'm curious if you would be willing to share your origin story and kind of how you got started with Jordan cards in the first place.
Yeah, man. What happened was I began collecting Jordan as a kid, and then I took an extended hiatus after Jordan retired, basically. And then I came back to the hobby in 2016. I took a non-traditional route through life in general. And so I was a non-traditional college student. I was in college in my mid-20s and even, into my late 20s. And when I graduated college in 2016, after I moved out, I went back to my parents' house for a little while just to visit, to relax, to breathe a little bit. And I ultimately knew I was going to begin getting ready for law school. So I did that. This was in 2016. And as part of my return back there, my mom sort of said, you've got a box in the closet here. In fact, you've got several boxes, and they're full of cards. And I just wonder, what do you want to do with these? And so I went through them all, This coincided actually with those legendary 2016 NBA Finals. So I just was poring over cards for basically the 2-week duration that incredible NBA Finals lasted. And I relived all the passion and the excitement of collecting cards as a kid. And, there's a bit of, pop psychology perhaps that I think is apropos here, which is, when we're kids, we are uninhibited and we naturally gravitate to certain things. And then as we become adults, we have to focus on other things, and sometimes we can lose touch with those original passions that we had, those things that we just naturally gravitate towards. And it was a blessing of the highest order that I was able to sort of rediscover something that just naturally appealed to me, which is cards, which is the intersection of sports, the intersection of collecting, art, technology, community, all those things. I've always loved them. And so it was an absolute thrill to come back to that world. Now, at this point in time, as I was pouring over these cards, I eventually got interested to the level where I started Googling some of these cards, and then I discovered that there was this incredibly robust marketplace happening through eBay, and I just dived in, and I actually got really enthralled by how the marketplace worked, and I wanted to start buying stuff, but I needed to, sell some stuff first in order to feel like I was justified to buy new stuff. So I dipped my toe into selling and buying on eBay. That was a blast. Started doing that more and more. And before I knew it, I had an Instagram page. I was, selling stuff on eBay all the time. I was having mail days coming in every day. I was just buying stuff like the 1991 Fleer Michael Jordan base card. And, I was just getting new stuff coming in every day, and it was amazing. But then I started to refine my taste a little bit. Constantly, as collectors, we have to make that trade-off of we only have limited funds, so how are we going to allocate them? And I decided, okay, I've had a lot of fun. Now I want to maybe go after some cards that are elusive. There's always been something really appealing to me about impossible cards, grails, that just seem out of reach. That's like a mount. That's my own little personal mountain that I like to try to climb, is to land those grails. And so I started working on that. And, over the course of the last 4 years, I would conservatively estimate that I've owned, 80 to 90% of the, recognizable Michael Jordan inserts. I definitely owned all the base cards for the most part, but not all. I mean, there's some that I never had, but the main ones from the main sets, definitely all those have passed through my hands too. And now I'm kind of at that grail collecting phase where, I want to get those cards that always felt impossible to me. Even when I first came back to the hobby in 2016, there was certain cards that I was doing my research that I just, had to wrap my head around the fact that at that point in time, I felt like I'd never owned them and that they weren't even meant for a person like me. They were out of my league. But after a while, you build confidence. You start to understand more and more about the hobby, and you start to, take more risks, take more chances, and that kind of leads to where I am right now, where I've been on this grail chase for a while. Now I'm really into making content for the hobby. With the way that the market for cards has gone up, it's become much more difficult to buy and sell stuff because it's just so expensive now that, a lot of the stuff's out of my range. But the way that I compensate for that is by making content and just by talking hobby and talking cards. So in late 2018, myself, my cousin Bryant, and my girlfriend Christina started a small podcast, the House of Jordan's podcast, dedicated to talking about Michael Jordan cards. And we've kind of evolved with it and grown with it and began to take it more seriously as time went on. And now most recently, I'm thrilled to welcome into the fold my brother Nick, who is now providing the visual production element to our podcast. So you can watch it on YouTube if you just search House of Jordans, or You can listen to it on Apple Podcasts, or you can go to the Bench Clear Media Network, the website, benchclear.us, and you can listen to us there. So that's a little bit about me, my friend. I would say, that in a nutshell, that's kind of my origin to present story.
That's amazing.
How about you? Yeah, how about yours? I'd love to hear about yours.
Man, I always loved MJ as a kid and really discovered him back in 1993, probably, 93, 94, and really kind of found out about him through his cards. My neighbor and one of my good friends had a bunch of his cards, and so I'd always look through his albums and see what he had, and he had a bunch of inserts and the 93, 94 finest and 94, 95 finest with the number 45. My friend Andy had the 93, 94 finest refractor, which was just impossible at the time. And I really remember the cards 94, 95 Emotion and Tops Embossed with the 45. And then I look back at his collection now, and he had Scoring Kings and the 94, 95 refractor, which was also impossible. I always enjoyed the base cards and just the beauty of the simplicity of those cards. And anyone who had an MJ card was cool. And so I collected from 1994 to 2000. I had a very modest Jordan collection. And then I do remember my friend Travis, his brother Sean, had the Air Jordan 11. So I remember trying those on. They were way too big. He was in high school, and I think I was 10 years old. So I always remember that. And then when I got to high school, I bought my first pair of Air Jordans. They were the Jordan 12. And then also I remember Michael Jordan did a love contest for his last season with the Washington Wizards, where you could submit what love is to you. It could be a poem, a painting, a drawing, a rap song, whatever it may be. And I sent a design in. It actually got chosen as one of 50 to go around the country in this, what was called the Love Truck. And it was pretty crazy to see. It was going around with Eve and Ludacris and the Roots and Derek Jeter and Randy Moss. And it was just incredible to see that. It was on the Jordan website. And so I had a connection to Michael there. And I was very fortunate to see Michael Jordan's last game in Milwaukee when he was playing on the Wizards. And then fast forward, I worked at East Bay in marketing for 4 years. And I eventually in 2012 met Michael Jordan and was lucky to spend 45 minutes with him, where we talked cards and shoes, and just an awesome experience. So I've had a connection to Jordan since I was a kid. I've been very lucky to meet him and have a ton of sneakers of his, and really have always appreciated his marketing and what he stands for, just kind of the epitome of greatness. So that's my connection. And I got back into the hobby in 2014. And ever since then, I've been buying up Jordan cards, buying lots on eBay, and just random inserts and things that I loved as a kid. And so now I have a couple refractors, and I have 4 Jordan rookies, and I have 4 Scoring Kings. I have 4 Intense, like a lot of cards that I always wanted as a kid, I now have duplicates of. So it's just really been a lot of fun to get back into the hobby, not just to collect MJ, but just to connect with like-minded people like yourself and a lot of great hobbyists who really have a great origin story of how we got into collecting cards, and specifically Jordans. I think we all have a memory of Michael.
Yeah, we sure do. And that kind of leads me to the topic of what do we love about collecting Michael Jordan cards. And you touched on this, and it resonated with me as well. When I came back in 2016, I had to make a decision of what direction my PC was going to go. So there's 2 dimensions to it. There's that, bloodline Chicago Bulls fandom, but there's also that conscious decision I made that I want to collect the very best player to ever play basketball. And another dimension to what's so great about collecting MJs, which we talked about, so I won't belabor the point here, is the aesthetics of the cards, the technology, the artistry, the designs. I'm big on aesthetics. I think aesthetics are incredibly important, and really what's tailored my pursuit of Michael Jordan cards more than anything else is the cards that visually appeal to me the most. And the other thing that's great about cards that I want to highlight, there's plenty more, is the great stories that individual cards can tell. And so I want to give an example of just one. And it's the 98-99 Ultra Michael Jordan base card, number 85 in the set. Now, there's 4 variations of this card. Let me give a little background on the card, and I'll tell the story of the card. There's 4 variations. There's the base version. There's the gold version. Both of those are unnumbered. Then there's the platinum medallion, which is numbered to 99. And then there's the masterpiece 1 of 1. Now, to give a ballpark of what the market on this card looks like, the PSA 10 base value at the time of this recording, and it's important to qualify that because Michael Jordan market seems to be jumping by leaps and bounds every day in reaction to this hype based on the documentary. It's about $50. The PSA 10 gold value is about $300. The PSA 10 platinum medallion out of 99 value, that's not known. But the average of the last 4 raw sales is about $4,400. So we're talking about an expensive item here. And I have in my hand, for the inspiration of the story I'm about to tell, my own copy of that card of the 98-99 Ultra Platinum Medallion Jordan. Mine's a PSA 8.5. Now, there is a PSA 10 of this card on eBay. It's listed at $15,000 OBO, so clearly it's not worth that. But it's definitely not a cheap card either. And, of course, the value of the Masterpiece 1 of 1, well, there's not a numerical value. There's a linguistic value on it, and the word I would use to describe it is priceless. So you can't put a number on it, but you can put that word on it. I think that's a priceless card.
Let me ask you this. So Nat Turner owns that card, correct?
Correct.
If that card came to market, knowing that Nat has it and knowing that Nat is probably the biggest buyer, not probably, Nat is the biggest buyer of basketball cards, how much do you think that card would go for on the open market?
Oh man, I can't even venture a guess on that because, dude, I don't think I've ever seen a 1 of 1 Masterpiece Michael Jordan card from any of the legacy brands of the 90s. You know, a card like the Ultra Masterpiece 1 of 1 or the Flair Showcase Masterpiece 1 of 1s. I mean, the Metal Universe Gem Masters 1 of 1. I don't think I've ever seen one of those MJs sell on the open market ever. So I would be wildly speculating as to what a card like that would sell for. It's no telling because, you know, there's a reason why cards like this get snapped up in private transactions and are never allowed to hit the marketplace is because nobody wants to even take the risk of letting, you know, a few different bidders get a chomp at the bit. These cards get picked off before those auctions ever get a chance to run. So my guess is as good as anybody's, but I don't think we'll ever know.
I'm going to speculate. I'm going to throw out a number. I think a card like that would go for $500 to $600,000.
I could see it.
I mean, if the green PMG, which is, let's call it the most popular, most famous Jordan potentially of all time, went for in an altered shape $350K, and a LeBron went for $900K, right? LeBron Jordan.
Yep.
1 of 1 went for $900K. Was that an auction or was that a private sale?
That was a private sale.
Okay, so somebody put a crazy number on that and the buyer took it. So unbelievable stuff right there. I mean, we're talking about, you know, some high-end art deals right there.
Yeah, man, that's the right way to think about it too, is that these are items that are lifetime achievements. The collection that Nat has built is, you know, one of the all-time great achievements in collecting history. And I would even put it into that realm of it belongs in the discussion in sports history as a reflection of the cultural dimension of sports as embodied in the collection of sports cards. I mean, I think what he's done by putting the pieces together in his PC that he's put together is just inspirational, and it's a model that, you know, in my own very humble, small way, I try to emulate to the degree that I can. So, you know, 500 to 600, I could see it, and I see the basis behind why you would think that. But, you know, I don't think we'll ever know because, well, it's a Nats PC, and, you know, that PC is a museum now. It's the most important PC in the world, and it's something that is bigger than the sum of its parts at this point in time. So I don't think we'll ever find out, my friend.
I agree. And for those of you that don't know, we're talking about a gentleman named Nat Turner. Nat is a great collector and an incredible hobbyist. What he's done for the hobby for his love of cards and how he goes about his business is something I think is super impressive. He's a true hobbyist. He's somebody who sold a couple companies over the last decade for some incredible amounts of money, but he has remained humble and been an amazing collector, and he's been very generous with his time to tell his story and show some of his cards. And so shout out to Nat, and a huge thanks to him for being a catalyst for all of us and a model for us to look at, to emulate, to your point, as to how we approach the hobby, how we buy what we love, and also how we carry ourselves along the way.
Yeah, well said. Very well said. Okay, so picking up the thread of thoughts here on this 98-99 Ultra Jordan base card and its variants, here's what's so cool about this particular card. So the photograph in this card depicts Michael Jordan near the rim in an overhead shot. Very unique photography and an exquisitely simple design. The photo itself depicts Michael Jordan's final game at Madison Square Garden as a Bull, which took place on March 8th, 1998. Now, in this photograph, Jordan is wearing the Air Jordan 1s from his rookie season. And he had to scour his house to find these shoes. And he only had them in size 12, and that was a problem because at that time, his comfortable shoe size was 13 and a half, but nonetheless, he wore them. Now, in that game, Jordan had, of course, a typical Jordan game. He had 42 points, 8 rebounds, 6 assists, and 3 steals. And the Bulls went on to win that game handily, 102-89. And in the post-game interview with Ahmad Rashad, MJ said the following, quote, "I was joking with my wife, and I said, you know what? We're going back to New York. Why not break out the old shoes? It's been a long time since I wore them. It's kind of fun to come back here and play and remember the old days and some of the games I played here, and the shoes are a part of that." And so this card, you can see the shoes clearly, almost as if the photograph was selected, because even though it's an overhead card, the arch of his body and the angle of the photograph allows you to see the shoes clearly. And you see such history wrapped up in this card, which is even more exciting with The Last Dance coming up, which will document this game, I'm sure, as part of that 97-98 Bulls season. It's just magnificent what these cards can, the stories they can tell in the periods of time that they can capture. So, you combine history like that, which we love, with the aesthetics and the design and the incredible connection that collecting cards creates with community and culture. And, I think that anecdote exemplifies as good as anything why we love to collect Michael Jordan cards.
I agree. And we have this amazing connection to these moments in Michael Jordan's career because they connect to moments in our life as well. And we talk about when we were kids, when we fell in love with watching Michael Jordan play. I remember where I was when I first saw some of these cards, whether it was a card shop or my buddy's house or trading with the local dealer at any given time. It's just amazing how it is so nostalgic and it brings us back to these moments. And I think, to your point, Michael Jordan is a cultural icon. You talk about his sneakers. Coming from a guy, I have over 650 pairs of sneakers and I actually have 40 pairs of original Jordan 1s from 1985.
That's unbelievable.
So when you talk about the sneakers on the cards, I know you and I had talked, we've gone on Instagram Live a few times. We've talked about the sneakers on the cards and how there's a connection to that as well. And, when you think of Michael Jordan, you think of his impact with Nike and Gatorade and Wheaties and McDonald's and all these endorsements that he had and Upper Deck and just all the cards that he appeared on. I think he made so many of these card companies millions and millions of dollars over the years and gave us all amazing memories of his career through these cards. And, shout out to the Arenas and all the other great designers in the hobby who over the years have done an amazing job bringing guys like Michael Jordan to life on cards and really making them these cardboard heroes.
Couldn't agree more. I could not agree more. And, there's a connection to that moment in time, undeniably. And then there's this other connection to the moment of acquisition of the card itself. I could go through my boxes of cards right now, and I could pull out a card blindfolded, no idea what card I'm drawing. Take off the blindfold and look at what card it was. I could tell you the approximate time period during which I bought it. I could tell you, what the negotiation process was like. I could tell you the feeling of exuberance upon receiving it and the position that it took in the architecture of my PC. At this point, as I flip through the items of my PC, I mean, it's memories and it's a sense of achievement. It's also a sense of ambition and wanting to achieve more and wanting to add on and keep the pursuit going. That's one of the things I'm actually grateful for with cards, is that it is such a lofty hobby in some ways, because there's just a limited but substantial number of items that could occupy a collector in pursuit for a lifetime, and I find that comforting, and I really enjoy that dimension of cards, the idea that this is a task that I'll be performing and continuing for the rest of my life as I continue to build and refine and sculpt the PC. So I think you really hit on something there. The moments in time that these collectibles connect us to.
100%. And I look at this as the pursuit you're talking about is super important as a collector. You always want to have something to strive toward, something to build toward. And that's why they call it a collection. You're building up a collection in a way that shows your taste and your style and your ability to maneuver in a very tough hobby to maneuver at times in order to get the cards that you desire and the cards that you love and the cards you connect with. And to your point earlier, it's become much more competitive and harder to get some of the cards. So I'll give you a lot of credit. You've done a great job architecting your collection and really being a pillar in the hobby to share stories and really share your passion and your love of cards. So with that said, I mentioned the rise in Jordan prices and it being very competitive, and that has to do with a lot of internal and external factors in the Jordan market and the media exposure and some of the things that are upcoming. So can you talk about some of those factors and what we can expect to see with this documentary and the Jordan card market overall?
We are now in a period with the Last Dance documentary where what I call external factors, as well as internal hobby factors, are influencing the Michael Jordan card market. And of course, the external factor is the unprecedented situation, the perfect storm that we have right now, which is the anticipation and hype relating to the Last Dance documentary coming out. And then you also have, so those are the external factors created by media speculation, by NBA TV playing every classic Michael Jordan game, by ESPN constantly reliving the greatest aspects of Michael Jordan's career. And of course, the documentary hasn't even aired yet. So those are the external hobby factors that are driving a lot of energy and new eyes and enthusiasm to card collecting and causing people to reconnect with that great era of card collecting. But then there's internal hobby factors too. There's people who are looking to take advantage of this opportunity by buying low and selling high and flipping cards, to these new entrants who are going to be coming into Michael Jordan, and also to people who just are feeling the pressure and the urge and the urgency to pick up Michael Jordan cards right now. So there's lots of elements at play here that are not normally at play in the Michael Jordan card market. And of course, all this is exacerbated by the fact that hobby attention is focused on Michael Jordan cards with even more laser-like intensity than it would have been otherwise, because there's no live sports being played right now. So very, very interesting time in Michael Jordan collecting, and there's no better time than right now to underscore and emphasize and encourage the philosophy to collect what you love, as you so aptly put it.
Yes. So with that said, to recap a little bit, we're all trapped inside, and coming up very soon on April 19th, which is Sunday, there will be 2 episodes airing of the new docuseries, The Last Dance, which features Michael Jordan and the Chicago Bulls' unprecedented run to complete their second three-peat and 6th NBA championship. As a huge Michael Jordan collector yourself, as a huge fan of Michael Jordan on the court and his cards, can you talk about your excitement, the energy around The Last Dance, and what that docuseries will mean to you.
Yeah, man, this is something that has become even more exciting for me as I've had the pleasure of collecting an active player over the past year. So the collecting an active player is a whole different emotional roller coaster, because you get to have a deeper connection to that player as night in and night out, as they play games, as they try to pursue achievements, as they try to add on to their legacy. And that was something that was never part of the deal with collecting Michael Jordan cards, because that legacy was cemented a long time ago. And the collecting of Michael Jordan cards was very heavily focused on the cards themselves and the hobby itself. And so it was more kind of like an appreciation of art type of venture rather than prospecting. But now we get this, incredible situation where we're actually going to get to ride an emotional roller coaster with Michael Jordan and the 1997-98 Bulls. And we're going to get to see and relate to Michael Jordan on a personal level that just doesn't happen with Jordan. I mean, he doesn't go on the talk shows. He doesn't offer his opinion on things. We don't get to build that personal connection with him as a celebrity that we get to build with many other celebrities. He stays out of the spotlight for the most part. He's a person who keeps to himself. He's focused on his business ventures, and he's a private guy. So this is a really, really unique opportunity to build a personal connection with him. And it was mentioned to me not long ago that by a young collector who hadn't experienced watching Michael Jordan play, but was very familiar with him and his brand, that the speech that Michael Jordan delivered at Kobe's memorial in Los Angeles was a great way for him to connect to Michael Jordan and respect Michael Jordan and understand a little bit about who Michael Jordan is. And when we do get to see a vulnerable side of Michael Jordan and we get to know him personally, it's amazing, and it builds a newfound respect and understanding of his legacy and who he was and what he stood for and what he accomplished. So that's something that I think Michael Jordan collectors everywhere are really excited about, is getting that chance to connect to him and relate to him on a level that we usually don't get. We're going to get to ride the highs and the lows of that season. And it's not just Michael Jordan in that season. It's Pippen, it's Rodman, it's Bill Jackson, it's the whole team and everything they accomplished. And it's not just the Bulls. It's their opponents and the other great NBA players who were competing vigorously to get that title. There was a lot of guys who Michael Jordan denied NBA championships to while they were in their prime. Karl Malone and John Stockton are two of the greats that come to mind in that category. Another is Charles Barkley. These guys had the misfortune of going up against the most dominant NBA player since the NBA took the global stage. So very excited to relive and learn about that history all over again. And of course, we know how the story ends. We do. Maybe not everybody does, though. And I'm envious of the people who don't know how this story ends, because it ends in the most magnificent fashion possible. But, we get to relive that story. And what a treat, too, when live sports are missing, that we don't get to watch live sports, but instead what we get to do is we get to go back to one of the most important years in the history of basketball and watch the greatest player of all time put the icing on the cake, which is his legacy and his accomplishments, winning that 6th NBA Finals, going undefeated in the NBA Finals, getting that 6th NBA Finals MVP, getting that 5th regular season MVP, scoring. You'll love this. In Game 6 of the NBA Finals, in which the Bulls won the championship, they were on the road in Salt Lake City. Michael Jordan scored 45 points. He made the game-winning shot with 6 seconds left to get his 6th NBA title. He scored over half of his team's points in that game, and that was his last game as a Chicago Bull. So, I mean, this is the story among many other stories that the documentary is going to tell. And, it's an unbelievably pleasant surprise that we get to experience this as Michael Jordan collector.
Yeah, not only as collectors, but fans of him, on the basketball court. I think the most amazing part about this documentary is that unprecedented access that was granted during that season for the cameramen along the way, but also we're getting the commentary from the teammates like Ron Harper, BJ Armstrong, Bill Wennington, Kukoc, as you mentioned, John Paxson, who's had a front row seat to the first 3 championships and then the first year of the second one. And you got to remember that they won 72 games, in that first year back in the three-peat, and then won another ring against the Jazz, and then this final season. Amazing that we're going to hear from Phil Jackson, a.k.a. the Zen Master, the coach, the architect of that team, and somebody who held all those personalities together. You mentioned the opponents. You're going to hear from Magic Johnson, Charles Barkley, Patrick Ewing, the rival Isaiah Thomas, and apparently they had a strong hatred for each other. And if you remember, Isaiah Thomas was actually snubbed off the Dream Team, and a lot of people speculate it's because Michael Jordan didn't want him on the team. We'll hear from Dominique Wilkins, Gary Payton, and Dikembe Mutombo. I think an interesting one will be his agent, David Falk, who had a front row seat and did a lot of those deals with Nike and Gatorade and all his other sponsors. One of his best friends on the media side, Ahmad Rashad. Sam Smith, who wrote the book, The Jordan Rules, Mike Wilbon, who's from Chicago, J.A. Adande, Will Obey, and Bob Costas, who was a commentator for a lot of those games, if you remember. And he was the one who commentated that last game and has a great final line that I'll leave for listeners when they watch. A couple celebrities, Carmen Electra, who dated Dennis Rodman, Justin Timberlake and Nas, who are big 90s basketball fans. The late David Stern will be very interesting. He's since passed away in January. David Stern was a commissioner during Michael's time in the NBA, so that'll be super interesting to hear his perspective. He was a huge part of the growth of the NBA. David Stern and Michael Jordan were kind of hand in hand in the growth in the 90s. We will hear from him as well as the current commissioner, Adam Silver. We're going to get appearances by 2 presidents, former presidents, Bill Clinton and Chicago native Barack Obama, which you can imagine Obama being in Illinois, was a huge fan of the Bulls. The one I'm most interested in hearing from, and I think it'll be very profound since he passed away tragically in the helicopter accident, is Kobe Bryant. Kobe Bryant, as we know, adored Michael Jordan, and Michael was a mentor to him, and I think it'll be a very touching moment. Now that Kobe has passed away, it's going to be pretty unbelievable to watch him sit and talk about Michael, and I really hope that ESPN has re-edited this stuff a little bit in order to make sure that the framework around his death is intact. So I think there's going to be a ton of epic moments in this docuseries. 10 episodes are going to air starting April 19th, 2 episodes every Sunday for 5 Sundays. And I know you're just as excited as me, and the hobby is on fire because of this. I think the sports world, everybody's trapped at home. The media is going to go crazy around this stuff. I think there's going to be a lot of revelations, good, bad, and ugly. But I think more than anything, I think this is a really nice bookend on MJ's career as an owner, as a human being, for us to really get a look into the mind of the greatest athlete of all time.
Well said, man. Very, very well said. I'm so now we have to figure out a way to pass the remaining time until this documentary comes out, because I'm ready to watch it right now.
So am I, but you and I have created something fun for the people. So we have brainstormed this, and we launched this about a week ago. And we launched this to celebrate the release of The Last Dance, and we are calling it #3Jordan Cards. And since you're the House of Jordans guy, I would love to have you explain that.
Yeah, man, I would love to. This idea was hatched during one of our late night phone calls, not unlike this one. And we were batting around ideas, and then you kind of said, something along the lines like, man, what if we, just kind of engage the community? There's so many Jordan collectors out there, and there's so many guys who aren't necessarily, seeing themselves as Jordan collectors, but have Jordan cards that they love. And I'm talking from every range of the hobby. What if we all united somehow? What if we challenge people to not only share with us their 3 favorite Jordan cards, but to tell the story about why? And in so doing, it folds in all the aspects of the hobby that we love. Talking about cards, celebrating an athlete that we all adore and admire, and then sharing our personalities, our stories, our lives, our histories, as those things are embodied in the cards that we collect. So we issued that challenge: post your 3 favorite Jordan cards and tell us why. And there's no rhyme, there's no specific formula to the why part of that equation. You can, it could be just because you love the way a card looks. It could be because it was something that you and, a parent acquired when you were a kid. Maybe it was a gift. Maybe you love a story that involves the card. Who knows? It could be any one of those things, but we want to hear the stories. And so far, the response has been incredible. So many people have used the hashtag 3Jordan cards on Instagram to share their story. Go look up. Go stop what you're doing right now if you haven't seen this already, and go to Instagram. Put in searching the tags, search hashtag 3Jordan cards, and go just look at these incredible entries. And don't just look at the pictures. Read the stories in the Instagram captions that go along with each picture, because it will warm your heart. It will inspire you. It will make you feel so good about the hobby, and it'll light a fire. Basically, that's what it did for me.
It's been really fun. It's been inspiring to see everybody share their stories. There's no 3 stories that are alike. There's a good variety. There are some similar cards, but there's also a lot of amazing hobbyists. And shout out to everybody listening now. We appreciate you guys engaging. We've had almost 60 entries, which is nice. We're trying to push that over 100. So again, the rules are to hashtag 3Jordan cards, post your 3 favorite cards, tell us the story why, tag 3 friends, 3 fellow collectors, 3 people that you think have a story, and try to spread the word. We're going to try to get over 100 submissions leading up to The Last Dance. We're excited. We've got a lot of great ones already, trying to push that over 100. For now, Chris, I know you don't have your choices, but I am going to share some of my favorite cards and narrow it down to my 3 favorite Jordan cards.
I can't wait. I've been waiting, and because I knew you were going to do this, and I can't wait to listen to the thought process here and see how you were able to narrow it down from 3,500 to 3.
Well, there's a lot of duplicates in that 3,500, but I'm a roots guy. I'm a nostalgic guy, as you know. There's a lot of cards back when I was a kid that when I got into collecting and I saw my friends' collections and I started going to card shops, I saw some amazing cards. I'm going to name some cards here that are not in my top 3, but I'm going to name them anyway because they're honorable mention and they deserve some shine. So I'm going to start with 93-94 Fleer Ultra, famous nicknames. That is such an iconic insert card. It's so simple. Back in the day, it was $15-20. It's now had fairly inexpensively. It's amazing. One of my favorites from the early 90s, mid 90s. I love all the MJ baseball cards, the collector's choice that I mentioned. There's some SP ones that are amazing. There's a die cut. 94-95 Flair was amazing, that 45. 94-95 Emotion. What we talked about earlier when you went into the history of those sets, some people don't know this, but 94-95 Emotion actually evolved into EXL in 95-96, which evolved into EX2000, which gave us credentials. So pretty amazing that the origins and the roots of those credentials actually stemmed from 94-95 Emotion back in the day. And then all the Fleer Metal cards, I'm obsessed with Fleer Metal. Those are some of the most iconic sets, in my opinion. Some of the most fun sets to have a card that looked and felt like it was metal when it wasn't, even though eventually in football they did bust out some actual metal cards. And then, of course, all the big cards that I never had and I still have not had but are amazing to look at. Jambalaya, Hot Shots, Hot Numbers, the PMGs, Essential Credentials, and Rubies. Scoring Kings, I love that card. But here are my 3. So now that I've mentioned way too many Jordan cards, I should have busted this out. Should have given you my top 23. But my 3 Jordan cards are the 93-94 Topps Finest Refractor. That card is, in my opinion, one of the most iconic card designs of all time. You talk about getting the Panini Rainbow these days. Well, you got the rainbow in that one card altogether. It was such an eye-catching card. There's a pose of Michael Jordan doing a dunk, and his whole body is stretched across the card. Up in the upper left corner says Michael Jordan. Topps Finest goes across the bottom, and the shine on this card is just unbelievable. And it's card number 1. It's actually the first refractor ever made. And I have an obsession with refractors, but this is the refractor in my opinion. I have 1 copy and another one on the way, and this is for sure one of my 3 Jordan cards. Number 2 is 94-95 Skybox Emotion Intense. This is one of the most underrated cards in my opinion. I never had this card as a kid, but I now own 4 copies. And it's just an unbelievable card. It's like a refractor finish. It's got this gold finish. It's the only insert of Michael Jordan wearing number 45 on the court. And it's got him passing the ball, and it's just unreal. It's got this Carolina blue font that says Michael Jordan. In the bottom left, it says Intense. And it's number 3 of 10. But this card is just a beautiful card. This gets my That's a Cool Card sticker for the day. And it is for sure one of my 3 Jordan cards. And last but not least, this is a card I lusted over as a kid. I never dreamt I would own this card, and it is the 1986-87 Fleer Michael Jordan, number 57. And it is, in my opinion, the Jordan rookie. You do have the star card that is considered a rookie to some. And I never thought I'd own a Jordan rookie. And the fact that I own 4 now, what that signifies to me is just how far you can come in life and how far you can take things even when you think things are impossible. And so to have not only 1, but 4 Jordan rookies now, to be able to celebrate that is something that I really take pride in. And so those are my 3 Jordan cards. I'll be posting that soon. I'm going to take this clip and make sure that's on Instagram. I'm going to post those 3 cards. Got 93-94 Finest Refractor, 94-95 Emotion Intense Insert, and 1986 Fleer Michael Jordan, number 57.
It's a tremendous top 3, my friend. And I love how the explanations are deep and they resonate. And it just, I feel what you're saying on the deepest level of collecting that we can, but it's also succinct and it tells a crisp story. So very nicely done. I think that really sets the tempo for how to do this thing. So well done. I
appreciate it. It's a lot of fun. You and I have talked a lot about connecting with like-minded people and making sure that we're uplifting the hobby and doing fun things like this that bring us all together. And I search that hashtag and I like those photos and I comment and I DM those guys. There's so many amazing collectors that have stories, and it is those stories that connect us all. And I encourage everybody to post their 3 Jordan cards, but I also encourage everybody to listen to hobby content, share it with your friends, share it with people who are new to the hobby. Spread the goodness, spread the love in this world, and make sure that you're always collecting what you love. And, I implore people to dig in and do their research and have fun with this. If you're not having fun in the hobby, you probably shouldn't stick around. This is meant to be fun. It's meant to have some camaraderie behind it and just to be something to escape from the real world. And Chris, I got to thank you for taking the time, man. This is something that you and I do talk a lot about cards, and it's a lot of fun to share this with the world and to be able to record it and document this is something hopefully our kids someday listen to. And I appreciate you taking the time and look forward to continuing to talk hobby. And if you have any last words, the floor is yours.
That sounds great, my friend. I just want to end on this note. In addition to expressing my gratitude to you, For the Hobby, to the hobby and the community itself, for, just being who you all, they all, we all are, and continuing to do what we love and sharing it and participating in it. Keep it up. It's amazing. It's a blessing every day to be able to wake up to this hobby. And then the final note that I want to end on is just the same note I opened on. What a time to be a Michael Jordan collector. Enjoy it, relish it, make the most of it, and let's just enjoy this ride.
Well said, my friend. Thank you all for listening to For the Hobby Episode 3, the Michael Jordan episode. We'll catch you next time.
Perfect.
For the hobby, 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 for the hobby.